The late 90s were the golden years of nu metal. You had bands such as Korn and Slipknot that were becoming more mainstream, and this was also a year before Linkin Park released Hybrid Theory, which is one of the best-selling metal albums of all time. But there was another band that released an album. It was an all-female band. They were young, still in high school, and the name of the band was Kittie, and their debut album was called Spit. They were pretty popular for a while, but somehow their popularity didn't last. So in today's video, I'm going to talk about why they should have been more successful. The band Kittie formed in 1996 in London, Ontario, when drummer Mercedes Lander and guitarist Fallon Bowman met in gym class. They found common ground in their appreciation for grunge with bands like Nirvana and Silverchair and began jamming together. Mercedes soon invited her sister Morgan Lander to join them, with Morgan taking on roles of singer and second guitarist. Initially, the trio focused on playing covers of popular bands like Nirvana, Silverchair, Deftones, and Korn. They eventually started writing their own music, with the song Brackish being their first original composition. Towards the end of 1997, the band decided to call themselves Kittie in preparation for an upcoming Battle of the Bands competition at a venue called Call the Office. They chose the name Kittie because they wanted to be contrasting with their music, as the name Kittie brings up images of something soft and cute, and their music was anything but that. In November 1997, Kittie found bassist Tanya Candler, a friend of Bowman's, thus completing their lineup. Now, what's interesting about this is Tanya Candler didn't have any prior experience playing bass before joining the band. Kittie then made their live debut at the Call the Office on February 28, 1998, and began performing regularly at local venues. They recorded 2 demo tapes titled Sex is Hell and Kittie and sent them to various record companies. A pivotal moment in their journey came in March 1999 when they performed at the Canadian Music Week Festival in Toronto. There, they caught the attention of Jason Weiner, a representative from NG Records, who, impressed by their live performance, offered them a 4-album record deal. Kittie's debut album, Spit, released in 1999, garnered significant attention, but also drew criticism. One main reason for the criticism was the band's age. Where the members were teenagers at the time of the album's release, the fact that some critics and media outlets fixated on. This was also an all-female band. Now, granted, they're not the first all-female band. That would probably go to the band Girl School, who formed in 1981, and there have been others that were never really that popular, but since then, there have been plenty of women in rock. But since nu metal was, for lack of another word, something new, they were scrutinized a little bit more for not only being females, but also because of their age. So for that reason, some critics had a problem with young girls creating this very aggressive music. Because keep in mind that many of the females who were in bands were playing somewhat of a commercial type of metal. I think there would be one exception, which would be the singer of the band Holy Moses, but they were more underground anyway. While the band members asserted they were not a feminist band, Spit's lyrical themes, which included sexism, hatred, and ignorance, added another layer to the controversy. The album's song titles, often provocative and aggressive, also drew criticism, with some misinterpreting them being solely about sex, further contributing to the negative perception. Kittie found themselves compared to pop stars like Britney Spears, labeled as the anti-Britney, a comparison they rejected, as they wanted to be recognized as a serious metal band. This comparison stemmed from a comment Morgan Lander made on the band's website, distancing their music from the teen pop genre. The band's attempt to distance themselves from the teen pop label and assert their metal identity seems to have backfired, leading to more criticism and comparisons. The band members, particularly Mercedes Lander, felt that a lack of proper research and understanding by journalists, coupled with the record label's decision to highlight their age against the band's wishes, contributed to the negative press. They also expressed frustration over the constant puns on the band's name, which they saw as an attempt to trivialize their music and reduce them to a novelty act. Another reason they didn't get taken seriously was because the lyrics on the album Spit. Many of the lyrics explore a range of intense emotions and experiences, including hate, ignorance, and sexism. According to a review from AllMusic, they claim the lyrics came from a feminist point of view. However, it's important to remember that, as I mentioned before, Morgan Lander has stated that Kittie does not consider itself a feminist band. According to the band, the lyrics explore everyday life struggles, which are not always positive. One of the recurring themes on the album is betrayal. This is most evident in the song Brackish, which is based on a friend's difficult relationship. Many of the lyrics come from a female perspective, specifically the degradation of women and the objectification they face. This is especially prominent in the song Paper Doll. Then there was a song that's called Johnny, and this song is about male domination over women. Then there's another theme that's brought up, and that's bullying. One of the songs that talks about that is called Raven, and that was inspired by a death threat the band received from a male band that they competed against. Then there's the title track, which has lyrics that express anger and frustration towards those who underestimate the band, particularly other local bands. So the song Choke focuses on toxic relationships where one person manipulates and hurts the other. Then there's a song called Do You Think I'm a Whore? Now this is one of those song titles that's probably misinterpreted, but it's important to understand the real meaning behind the song. It encourages listeners not to judge based on appearances. Despite the dark and aggressive tone of the lyrics, Morgan Lander has emphasized that the band members led fairly normal lives. So in other words, they're not necessarily coming from true stories, but more of the average experiences of teenage girls in high school. As for the music, I think it's a pretty good album. It's a type of music that's fairly simple. There's lots of guitar riffs. You can tell they tuned their guitars down. You could also tell they were young and they haven't spent a lot of time with their instruments. But they are like those old punk bands, something like the Ramones. You know, they were not virtuoso musicians, but they made some pretty good music. It's the type of music you can just enjoy, have fun with. A lot of it reminded me of the nu metal that was being played around at that time. I would say the closest thing would be something like Slipknot or something of that nature. As for the lyrics, if you know me, you know I don't like it when female bands write lyrics about hating men. And I think an example of that would be the album from Scene Queen, Hot Singles in Your Area, which came out this year, which is probably my worst album of the year. And I didn't like that album because of the man-hating lyrics. But I think this Kittie album is different because it seems more genuine, seems they're describing experiences as opposed to trying to convince the listener that all men are evil, and they're not trying to push this modern feminist agenda. Now, why were they not as successful as they could have been? So here are a few theories. First was their shift in musical style. While Spit was firmly rooted in the nu metal sound popular in the late 1990s and early 2000s, the band later moved away from this style, exploring heavier and more extreme metal subgenres. This shift alienated some of the original fan base who enjoyed their nu metal sound. For example, there was more screaming and less singing on later albums, which turned a lot of fans, leading to the decline in their fan base. There was also a stigma from Spit. The band faced significant criticism and scrutiny for their debut album, largely due to their young age, which was an all-female lineup. And this aggressive musical style created a stigma around the band that they struggled to shake off. This impacted their reception with later albums. Another reason was the lack of originality in later albums. Even though Spit was not breaking any new ground musically, it's still the best album. So for that reason, the next few albums didn't really catch on too much. Another reason is the overemphasis on the screaming vocals. Many fans preferred Morgan Lander's singing voice over her screaming vocals. They argue that focusing on singing would make the music more enjoyable and appealing. It's possible that the band's continued use of the harsh vocals on later albums limited their broader appeal. Another reason was the limited radio and media support. The album Spit benefited from radio airplay, MTV rotation, and media coverage. However, there's no mention of similar levels of support for their subsequent albums. Lack of mainstream exposure could have hindered their ability to reach a wider audience. And lastly, there was a focus on the U.S. market. While Spit achieved gold certification in the U.S., it had less of a commercial success in Canada. One reason is the band's record label, Artemis, primarily focused on promoting them in the U.S. market, potentially neglecting opportunities in their home country. this limited exposure in Canada might have affected their overall success. So let me know your thoughts on the album Spit, and what do you think of the band Kittie? What do you think of their later albums, and even the album that came out this year, which I thought was not too bad. But anyway, thanks for watching. Check out this video right here. Please give this video a like. It helps me with the YouTube algorithm. Please subscribe if you have not already. I do rock and metal reviews, rankings, and more. And thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.